Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. And as Aisha said, my name is Beth Schaeffer, and I will be talking about high elevation crevasses in the interior of the Greenland ice sheet. First of all, why do we study the Greenland ice sheet? Well, it is the world's second largest ice sheet, and it contains enough ice that if it were to melt completely, it would raise current sea levels by over 7 meters. This is understandably a very large concern because a lot of people's homes may eventually be underwater. The dynamics of the Greenland ice sheet have been changing recently in response to our warming climate. Presently, half of Greenland's ice mass loss is due to surface melt, with the other half being from calving from glaciers. This calls attention to a need for a more extensive study of the high elevation interior. At this point, I will define high elevations as being more than 1,600 meters above sea level. In 2012, Greenland experienced a record-breaking melt season. There was so much meltwater flowing off the ice sheet that it took out the bridge over the Watson River in Kangaroo Flat, which is the main hub for scientists who study Greenland's ice sheet. During the same season, dozens of thin crevasses were discovered at about 1,900 meters above sea level. A few even shut down a runway at Raven Camp, where pilots trained to transport scientists and ecotourists around polar regions. This was rather alarming, and not only because of future implications to safety. Previous studies and models have indicated that the ice is flowing too slowly at high elevations for stress cracks to form. My role in this project has been to help answer questions about how these cracks could have formed. To do this, I've worked closely with Mike McFerrin, Tasha Snow, and a few of their colleagues at the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences, or CIRES, at CU Boulder. At the end of April 2017, my mentor led a team to set up 5 differential GPS stations in a field of crevasses northwest of the Canyon site. The stations recorded latitude, longitude, and elevation every 15 seconds for a year. In October, the antenna on MCF3 became disconnected, presumably due to wind, and the station failed to collect any data for the rest of the study. The other 4 stations were only interrupted a few times during the winter as light became too sparse to charge their batteries or their antenna became buried in snow. After the study period was complete, the team recovered the data and passed it on to me. My job was to take that data and turn it into meaningful information. For now, I will just give you a quick overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have at the end. First, I used Trimble software and a precision point positioning website called Opus for initial processing. Second, I used Python programming to sort the data, convert latitude and longitude to North Polar stereo coordinates, and plot absolute and relative movements and speed. Third, I created map overlays in ArcGIS using my relative movement plot, a WorldView 1 satellite image, and a digital elevation model from Arctic DEM. Here we have the plot of absolute GPS station movements. East, west, and north-south movements are plotted on the left, and east, west, and elevation movements are plotted on the right. Notice the color key in the top left corner, which will be consistent throughout our discussion for simplicity. We can see that the stations moved about 55 meters west-northwest over the study period, and that they moved about a meter downhill. Also take note that the stations MCF1 and MCF4, which I have circled here, are located farther downslope than the other stations and were farthest from MCF5. This is a plot of the speeds of absolute movement. The data appear quite noisy, which you can see in the lighter shades. I applied a statistical technique called a Gaussian filter to make a smooth curve and plotted that in darker shades. All 5 stations moved at about 15 centimeters per day. They all appeared to have sped up in the summer and slowed in the winter. We can also see that MCF1 and MCF4, which were farther down slope, were consistently moving about 1 to 2 millimeters a day faster than the other stations. This is a plot of the locations of the 5 GPS stations. The arrows in the figure are there to give the general direction of station movement relative to MCF5, which is in the little purple triangle. Basically, they all appear to have spread out as the ice moves downhill. This is a plot of the relative speeds over time. It shows the stations moving away from MCF5 between 0.5 and 2 millimeters per day. The rate of spreading for all stations appears to have increased in the winter. Stations MCF1 and MCF4 also seem to have moved away from MCF5 faster than the other two stations, which is another example of our spreading that we're talking about. Now to the map overlays I made in ArcGIS. This map shows the elevation gradient of the area to the west of CanU. Our study site is in Box B. Box D is an area downslope from CanU with more crevasses. Each color band represents 2 meters of elevation. A surface lake can be seen in the top left corner, and slush fields are visible in the bottom right. In the map of our study site, we can see that the crevasses were oriented roughly perpendicular. The crevasses moved roughly perpendicular to the orientation of the crevasses. And in this map, the crevasses downslope from CanU appear to be bending as the ice moves downhill and under the slush field. The correlation between the orientation of the crevasses, local topography, and direction of flow strongly indicate that strain plays a role in the formation of these cracks. A 2009 to 2013 study showed the rate of flow in this region is accelerating. Our data confirm this, showing a 7.5% increase over 2009 velocity. We find it likely that strain rates have increased as well, but our strain rates are still only 0.1% per year or less, which is much lower than the 0.5% per year critical strain rate previously thought necessary to form stress fractures. We therefore find it unlikely that Greenland's high elevation crevasses were formed only by increasing strain rates. We think they may have something to do with firn and meltwater. No, not firn as in the plant. Firn as in snow being compacted into ice. Firn generally exists at higher elevations where there's still enough snowfall to build up year by year in layers. One neat feature of this firn is that it is porous, allowing for meltwater to percolate down and refreeze at depth to form ice lenses. This has been thought to help counteract ice mass loss from the surface of the ice sheet. The high volume of runoff in 2012, however, led scientists to believe that the storage capacity near CanU may have been compromised. Here on the bottom, we have an image of a radar transect centered near CanU. Porous firn is represented in green and red. On the left, you can see ice lenses meters thick represented in dark blue. Frozen meltwater has filled the pore space in these areas and is now preventing access to any firn still below. The water is instead collecting in surface lakes, shown in the top image. Now you may be asking, what do firn and meltwater have to do with high elevation crevasses? Well, we know the rate of flow is accelerating. Different rates of flow at different locations can occur when ice moves over topography and are essentially the cause of stress fractures. Greenland is actually quite mountainous, though the overlying ice tends to smooth the surface. As ice is less porous than firn, it may not adapt to strain as well and may be more likely to fracture than firn. So these appear to be the main mechanisms at play. We cannot rule out other hypotheses which may contribute to the formation of such high elevation crevasses. Here is a graph from a previous study where temperature instruments were installed in boreholes near CanU. The cooler colors represent firn that is well below freezing. Red and orange show where firn is not as cold. The firn is still frozen, but only just so. Meltwater has percolated down and warmed it up a bit. This can cause expansion during melt seasons and contraction as the meltwater refreezes, which can then cause cracks to form. You can think of these in the same way as mud cracks. As mud puddles warm up and dry out, cracks form on the surface. Like mud cracks, cracks formed from thermal contraction are often hexagonal in shape. As we had seen, the crevasses near CanU are fairly linear. So it is unlikely that they were caused by temperature variations alone. We conclude that the most likely mechanism for the formation of high elevation crevasses in southwest Greenland is brittle surface ice with accelerated flow over local topography. We cannot, however, rule out a combination of factors, which may include increased strain rates and thermal expansion and contraction of surface ice. More study will be needed to investigate further. As the climate warms, the resulting changes in the dynamics of ice sheets will affect sea levels globally. Increasing volumes of meltwater are added to the oceans each year. It is therefore important to better understand how crevasses are forming at high elevations and what effects they may have on future ice mass loss. Heartfelt thanks go out to all who supported me on this project, especially everyone at UNAVCO, my research mentors Mike McFerrin, Mike Willis, and Tasha Snow, and my communications mentor Kathy Robinson at CU Boulder. Without all of you, this incredible research project would not have been possible. Also, thank you to the NSF, NASA, and CU Boulder for all the funding necessary to do this research. Last but not least, thank you all for coming today. I will take any questions you have.
Thank you, Beth. We have a question.
Awesome job, Beth. My question was on the graph that you had shown in the beginning. Why, and I might have missed this, why was MCF 5 your anchor point? Was it just because it was the farthest up slope?
Yes, that did help. Actually, it turned out to help that it was farthest up slope. Mostly it was chosen randomly at the beginning.
Okay.
But it did help out a lot because it was on the edge. Also because the MCF 3 kind of cut out halfway through, so we didn't want to choose that one. So that was ultimately why we chose MCF 5.
Any other questions? Going once? Okay, so thank you, Beth.